Hey, welcome to Seth on Call. Thanks for joining this afternoon. I'm going to get a few things kind of set up here and rolling before we get into a couple, maybe at least one topic, maybe two today in Genesys Cloud World. Right now, the title on the stream info is for doing dynamic skills using data tables. So we're going to try that out in a little bit. We'll give everybody a little chance to kind of hop online here. Notifications going out, hopefully. As we're doing that, I'm going to get some music started here. Basically, I've got everything pulled up. I kind of need to get my notes in order here, as well as get some of my chat windows pulled up so I can take a look out there and see what you guys have to say as I go along. Feel free to comment along. I don't always keep an eye on the chat. I know I'm not as good as some streamers in immediately replying to anything that comes in. I kind of get going with the topic, and it takes me a little bit of focus for a little bit, and then I'll kind of take a little moment to look over at the chat. So give me those moments when they do happen. Hope you're all doing well this afternoon. Okay. Stream is up over there, looking good. And we are live on all of them. Cool. And let me get those chat windows thrown out here. There's a 1. And we're working on number 2 here. Where is that? Top chat. I kind of need some. Okay. Where is that? Oh, there it is. Pop out chat. All right, window number 2 up. And I get bad feedback in my ears when I open up this screen and pop out the chat, so I may be quiet for a second. All right, 1, 2, 3 chats we have up. Let me get these all sorted. It should be a good one. And I'll try and bring sometimes I bring the chat windows up on my phone, but I found that that's not really that efficient. Okay, so chat number 2 getting sorted. There's a little bubble that always pops in this chat, and it drives me up a wall, which is fine. Okay, this chat's gonna go over here. Maybe I can kind of sort it over there. And this one will kind of go down here. Okay, hopefully that's not too much in the way. Oh, okay. And this one will go over here. Okay, I usually just kind of put those in place so I at least have an idea of when I might need to go check it on the main profile. Alright, I like those setups. Okay, let me switch over to my other machine here, and just gonna get this one all set up as well. I almost had everything set up, but I was mostly working on prep for the topics I'll be covering today, so it took me a little bit. I wanted to make sure I kind of got all my scripts and everything up running. And that is there. I'm going to clear one of my terminals over here. Sweet. Yeah. All right, our views are looking good there. And this is the one where I'm going to pop up a few different views so we can get rolling once these are all up and running. Okay. I don't want that dashboard. Yes, I want this dashboard. And pop out chat. Sweet. And then we'll do the next one. It's taking its while. Chat is disabled. That's not true. Yeah, let me close that then. We'll reopen it. What do you mean it's disabled? That's no fun. Okay, dismiss. Ah, here we go. It was trying to bring up an old stream. That's why. I tell you, that's pretty buggy. And our last one here. Oh boy. That just like freaked out on me. Come on. I don't know why it's freaking out. Well, I guess I'll close this window and we'll try it again. And close and close. Oh, cool. All right. We're all set up there. And let me get to my main views over here. Let's go to the analytics section so we can start from there. Okay. I think we're all set. I got my views brought up that I wanted. We've got all of our chat boxes up, so I should be able to respond once I see those coming in. Audio checks, light checks all look good. I think our frame rates are looking pretty good as well. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we'll get started. Welcome to Seth on Call. Today I'm going to try and go over two topics. We'll definitely cover the first one being dynamic skills. This is going to be building out a flow where we might have quite a few departments in our company, and rather than build a flow every time we have kind of a different assignment of skills, maybe there's, just one skill getting assigned, but maybe there's two, maybe there's three getting layered onto the same interaction. A lot of times we want a little bit more of a dynamic way of doing that, including using a data table. We've kind of gone over data tables in a previous video, so definitely encourage you to check that out. And then there's also, of course, the basics for the architect videos that are out there that will kind of pull in. So this is a little bit more of just kind of an advanced level, an advanced configuration of how we would do skill assignments before routing into a queue. So that's going to be topic number one. Topic number two, if I can get to it today, otherwise we will do it another time, is going to be a program that's developed by Genesys for publishing call flows in a kind of more command line option way. The program is called Archie. It is available on the Genesys site, so I'll go through showing how we could download that, unzip it, get it into a folder, and then start using this application. It will use an OAuth credentials that we would set up for data actions. I've done a data actions video before. Would use that same environment. I'll go through a little bit of the role configuration as well as setting up that OAuth account for this use, and then how that would be used. Typically, the use case for that is going to be if you are a Genesys Cloud Administrator and your company has multiple organizations, as far as like orgs, as Genesys Cloud calls them. You could kind of think of them almost as like the Genesys Cloud instances, to where a kind of smaller company might just have one. A larger company would potentially have a secondary one for development, one maybe for a different group within the company, and then sometimes very large companies will have a dev org, testing org, staging org, and then a production org, and then maybe even a production org that's in a different region. Because Genesys Cloud will have different regions, like an East 1 versus West 2, West 1, those kinds of things. So sometimes orgs can exist in different regions, or all within the same region, but just kind of different of those instances within Genesys Cloud. That is where Archie comes in as a very helpful tool. Because within those different orgs, all of your different objects, such as groups, queues, users, they're all going to have different IDs. And so when we do an export of kind of through the graphic interface, the UI of Genesys Cloud, the default is going to export those IDs. And so when we use that kind of proprietary file of Architect to move into a new org, it's going to work but be very inefficient, because all of those IDs will reset, and so you have to go through your call flow and relink things such as like data actions and queue transfers and many of the other kind of object tie-ins that you have. So that can be a tricky thing. So with that, I think we will get started here. What kind of voice not coming through? Okay, unfortunately, I don't know if I had too much to change. I did actually go to one of my streams. I do stream on multiple platforms. I was on Kick, and it was coming through, and it was ringing through my ear. So I'll double check it. Let me hop into the YouTube one. Maybe it is a little delayed before I get started here. All right. I'll see if I can hop into it here. And there I am. I'll check it here. Okay. Okay, I hear audio on that YouTube stream. So hopefully maybe a refresh or checking your speaker settings. I think audio should be coming through. Just test it on my phone. But if it's still not working, please let me know. Cool. Okay, so that was the topics that I was going to go over. Was again, number one being the dynamic assignment of queues. Sorry, not queues. Well, actually, we will include queues in that. So I correcting myself. We will show the dynamic assignment mostly of skills. It's just kind of more of the important factor in that, because of how skill assignments may be variable from a number perspective. 1 versus 2 skills versus 3 skills. Language skill is always going to be 1. Queue assignment's always going to be 1 for a particular call. So those are going to be a little bit more straightforward in how we can dynamically assign those through a data table, but that will be part of it as well. So we will be showing that. And then, of course, if I can get to Archie. So I should have the next hour and 15 minutes or so to go through. So strap in, and we'll tackle as many of those topics as we can. So number one, I'll kind of start over with a little bit of an intro for the dynamic skill assignment. So welcome to Seth on Call, where now I'm going to be going through the actual assignment, dynamic assignment of skills within a Genesys Architect flow, where at the very end of it, we're going to be doing a transfer to ACD. That transfer to ACD object, if you've gone through kind of a more basics course of Genesys Cloud training, they're going to take you through going through the kind of the queue assignment through a drop-down box that's going to be on that action item, as well as some of the other settings that are kind of drop down, choose one of the options that are there type of configuration. Now, as a lot of objects within Architect have, you have a little button off to the right where you can switch from really kind of more manually assigning, or as a developer might say, hard-coded values into a action and actually using something called like an expression, switching it to an expression mode where you're able to more so dynamically put in like variable names and actually kind of maybe manipulate a little bit of your variables to get at a particular value that you want when putting into that field. And so that's what we're really going to be doing today. We're going to be kind of going one step further beyond just what is the drop down options on an ACD transfer, and then being able to dynamically assign those variables. We're going to do it for Q. We're going to do it for the language queue, the priority value, as well as, and fourth being most important, the skill assignments for a particular interaction. And I cover that, the skill assignment being the most, or kind of general skill assignment being the most important thing, because those fields for ACD skill assignment in that field is kind of a one-on-one add. So if you need one skill, you'd kind of hit the plus button, and then that would give you one ACD skill to set. You hit the plus button again, it gives you a second ACD skill to set. And that can become a bit problematic when we do want to set up a very dynamic flow where a call might come in, and because of the called number or maybe a menu choice, something along those lines, we now have maybe 2 skills to assign, or maybe even 3 skills to assign to a particular interaction. And if we want to set that up in a dynamic way, all of a sudden now we have to create like multiple ACD transfer steps and kind of a big long switch statement, because if we want to have one skill, we want it to go to that one, where we're kind of manually assigning that one, and the build out can get quite complex. And you'll kind of see what I mean as we get into the actual design of the ACD transfer step. But that's what we're going to talk about today. I've found something that works for me. It's never really busted the system in a way where it aired out a phone call or anything like that, but I was able to come up with a structure based on putting values into a data table, dynamically set up those skills, and to a certain amount I'll kind of show how you kind of want to build the system to the max amount of layered skills that you might have on an interaction, and then leave it at that, and build out more if you need to in the future. But outside of that kind of high numbered threshold, that's really about it that you should need to put in the flow. And then you can go into your data table and set 1 skill, 2 skill, 3 skill, 4 skill, and not have to republish this flow that we're going to build today. So that's the goal. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and switch over into my Genesys architect view and start to build out a flow. So built out many flows before for videos. We're going to do a new one. I'm going to say, let's do Seth on call, dynamic skill flow. And I'm going to keep that in my demo division, create flow. It's going to do its thing. If you watched any of my videos before, I go through a very quick process of just kind of defaulting a flow to my intended uses. It's just because when you build out a flow, there are a lot of times there's these kind of default options that are set. I like to just kind of go through and reset up things a little bit, so I have a little bit more of a blank slate when I operate. So I'm going to go through those real quick. So first thing going to be doing my main task. I cover this in my architect intros video. I'm going to leave this with a disconnect for right now, so that error message goes away. Then I'm going to set this main task as my starting task. And then the main menu I'm going to delete because I will not need a menu today. And then this initial greeting, just going to clear it out. A little placeholder I use because we will not be using this kind of mandatory audio area, as I will be using a to audio, not set. And close. Okay, so we've cleared out all those basics. We're ready to get going with a main task here. So let's start it off. What are we going to begin with? The main thing that we're going to be building for is really a data table pull in, and I'm going to show the data table in a minute. I've already built it out, but I'm going to walk you through how I built out that data table. And then we're going to do an update statement where I take in some of those string values that are going to be coming out of the data table. I'm going to be converting them into the objects that the ACD transfer step is going to expect. sometimes you don't always need to do that because you can kind of just really do your string manipulation in the expression fields of an transferred ACD object. But I want to really show, just for the sake of understanding this flow and what I'm building, I'm going to show an update statement which does those kind of type changes from the string values right up front, just for your ease of use. As you start to build out Architect, you might find that you don't really do as much kind of type changes to like a queue object or skill object. You really just kind of do it in the fields where it's necessary. But I'm going to show it hopefully very straightforward, so that way you have an idea, you can kind of follow along maybe a little bit better with me as I do this. So that's what's going to be that update statement. I'm going to use a very small loop. So if you haven't seen loops before, this will be maybe a little first entry into that. And the loop is going to be so we can very dynamically create a list of skills based on either having 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go up to 5 today. So that's going to be my threshold. I'm basically saying that never in my organization am I ever going to layer more than 5 skills, which is a lot. That's going to be a lot of details added onto a call flow. So you're in that kind of call flow where you'd have like up to 5 skills assigned. You'd probably have a massive amount of agents in there because they'd have all these different skillings existing all within one large queue. So very rare. I don't know that I've ever seen like 5 skills later on, but hey, it could happen, right? So we're going to show that kind of scenario is up to a threshold of 5 skills getting set. Then really after that loop and that set, I'm going to then show how we're going to add in that ACD transfer step, and then how I'm going to dynamically put those values in there. So let's get started. One of the first things that I like to do before I go to my data table is do a little bit of an error validation. Within Genesys Cloud, we can have calls come into a flow that may have come across like a SIP timeline, if you're familiar with that kind of treatment of telephony. And a SIP string and addressing does not handle too well in some of the functions that we're going to use, because we will be using one we could potentially be using a 2 phone number and all that, and it doesn't know. And if you're doing some validation based on that, it's not always good to be doing that off of a SIP statement. So that's why I always put this in up front. It helps with your error handling. I'm not going to do too much after it, so in the kind of the negative or the false instance, not too much. But hey, I can talk a little bit as I get this finished up, what we could do in that scenario. Okay, so 2 phone number. What I'm going to be doing my routing based on today is the fact that I can have different kind of phone numbers coming into the same flow. So I'm going to dynamically assign these variables today based on me calling in on some of the fake numbers that I have. So I have a phone number that ends in a 003, a 004, a 005. So those are going to be my inbound kind of calls into this. So what I'm going to need to use is the called address, not the called address original. That's going to be the phone number that I call into my system on. I don't want that. I'm doing called address. And I generally will suggest using called address when building out flows, because you might have, most of the time you do have scenarios like this where you're transferring calls into a flow and you need some different logic, maybe because we did do an internal transfer of something over to a different number. Called address is going to be that updated number that we're transferring with. So what I'm doing right now is, because as I mentioned, this could be a SIP address and I just don't want to deal with those right now. So I'm going to do dot, and there is a Boolean test on the 2 phone number. So it's dot is tel, and that's what I want. So meaning that it is a telephone number that is going to return a Boolean value. So the expression field is going to be okay with this because we're doing a decision statement. It wants a true false, and .isTel is going to give us that. So 2 phone number, called addressed isTel. That's what we want. So we've got that. Like I said, I'm not going to do too much error handling on it right now. I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect the call so we just don't deal with it for right now. And I maybe would put an audio prompt in there, or maybe kick it over to another flow where I could have some logic for that call, whereas I can't do none of my decision statements or logic that I'm going to be doing today. So FYI for that. Okay, so the decision statement's there. We now know that we have a very valid called address being a phone number, and so I can go ahead and put in a data table. So I'm going to go ahead and show the data table that I've created. I built this over in the orchestration assets area of Genesys Cloud Admin. I'll show, basically how I did build this real quick. I may not hit the complete button, but I'll just take you through it. So I hit add. I named it something like, Acme table build. And I put it in my kind of demoing division. And the reference key label is very important. This is going to be the phone number. As I mentioned, I've got these different ones, the 003 and all that. That is going to be my primary key for this data table. I made a called address, so we'll keep that same. And then sometimes I like to kind of give myself a little note here. Oh, as you can see, it's in there for my history. So called address, DNIS. For those a little bit more familiar with telephony terminology, that's basically is the kind of call-in number. That would be our publish number. I'm going to hit save. And then in here, I'm going to add a couple of fields. So the first one I'm going to add is going to be, let's do the queue name. And then I'm going to add another field. This time I am going to enter an integer. This I'm going to name priority. Priority is kind of the skip to the front of the line type number. I'm going to leave it as 0 for default, but it's a way of just, like I mentioned, we might have an important call coming through, something maybe a little bit more in an emergency situation, or just it's coming in through a customer line that we published for some of our higher paying customers. So priority is going to throw that onto the interaction and jump it further up the line based on that number. There's a lot of documentation out there about how far up the line it will go. It's usually a way of saying like, here's some kind of added wait time to add into this call, even though it actually hasn't waited that time. That's what kicks it ahead of other calls that might be waiting. So that's what the priority value is going to do. I'm going to also add in the language skill field. We cannot layer language skills. Makes sense, right? We're just going to either speak English, Spanish, something along the line. So I won't be naming it language skills. I'll be naming it language skill. And then, I hit the save button. I didn't mean to do that. Where did I go with that? Table build, yeah. Okay. So we did priority, language skill, and then the last one I'm going to do is the actual skill field. So I sometimes just name the skill list. There we go. So there we go. We've got 4 fields that are going to exist on top of our primary key. So the queue name, priority, language skill, and skill list. And the skill list is going to be the one where I'm going to just make that in a kind of schema of doing names pipe delimited. So it'll be like skill 1, skill A, pipe, and then skill 2, skill B, so on and so forth. And this is something I would want to, train my operations team on so that way they know this. And sometimes even with data tables, as I've mentioned before, and just kind of intro videos, data tables, you may even give access to high-level managers within your call center if they're at that level where they could be trusted with doing these type of changes kind of on the fly, because that's what data tables allow us for you to do, is do changes within the day, and avoids us having to do a bit more of a riskier thing, such as publishing a call flow in the middle of the day. So data tables could do that. So again, I'm just making that note. Make sure you do some training with those that are going to be potentially having access to this data table, so that way they always know, hey, make sure you do a good job of correctly spelling the skill name, and then putting that pipe delineation in there. We want to avoid white spaces in there, just so it's all kind of one string, because that's going to be how we then are going to parse that, and I'll show that within our actual build out. So okay, so that is the idea of what we're going to build in the call flow. I'm going to use one that I built earlier because I've already got some data in there. So that's going to be this one down here, this one that I labeled inbound dynamic department assignments. So you see I've built out some fake numbers in here already. I gave some queue names, sales, marketing, customer service, and then I set up some priority numbers in here. So this one here, the 005, is going to skip that phone call a little bit higher up in the list than some of the other ones. And then I have my language skill over here. Again, just one value. No need to worry about any pipe delineation in that. That's just going to be English and then Spanish. I'm using those two for today. And then the skill list. This is where you do see that. I've got one skill here for the 003, 2 for 4, 2 for 5, and then I've got 3 for 6. And I could even create another entry in here for 1 where I would even layer in an additional 2 skills. So that way we could go all the way up to 5. I'm not going to put that value in here for right now. I'm just going to operate off of us doing 3, because one of the things we do want to test with is not using all of those fields, because that is where a caveat is of where we could have a potential error, right? It's like what happens in our parsing when we kind of set up for the threshold of 5 skills being able to be used, but we only use 4. There is a possible break scenario there, and I'll talk through that as I build out the flow. So for right now, we're going to deal with this data set, and I'm going to go ahead and import this data table now into my flow. So back in Architect, I've got my dynamic skill flow, call flow built out to kind of the base layer I want. I've already done my decision statement for making sure this is a valid phone number that we'll be calling in on behalf of. Let's go ahead and then put in that data table. We're going to data table lookup, and I'm going to choose that inbound dynamic department assignments. Okay, so we already did that evaluation of called address, make sure it's telephone. So in here, I'm just going to do a very simple statement. This is why you do want to kind of have some error handling up front around your number and just making sure that the phone numbers you are calling in are going to be valid. So what I'm going to go in here is I'm going to do a function called write. It's basically taking in the text from the right line item of the phone address. So we're going to pass in that called address. And then I'm going to do comma and 10. So I'm just grabbing from the full right position the 10 digits that follow that, so that way we can just really grab that, because there's going to be some prefixing, for instance, tel, colon, maybe even the country code and a plus. So just to avoid all of that, that's going to be kind of on the left side, we're going to start from the right position, go 10 spaces and grab that, and that will be that fake number list. And you kind of already saw those primary keys that I have entered in. That's how we're going to be able to really kind of do that mix and match as we go through that data table. So now we've got that as our input. Now let's start assigning our outputs. So this one up front, as you've seen, if you see me work with my data tables video, I like to do a little prefixing of DT. So I'm going to do that just so when I use these variables on down the line, I know that it's kind of like the raw output of this data table. So DT queue name set. We're just going to be using tasks today. There is the other types such as flow, and I don't need to use the flow variable type today, because I'm just going to be building this all within one task element. But a lot of times when you are building out a dynamic flow like this, it's because you're building a rather large flow. And so if I was using separate tasks and kind of flowing through some menus, I definitely would be making these flow variables so I could use them outside of this task I'm building right now. So just a little heads up there. But for today's example, I'm just going to leave things as tasks. Okay, we're going to switch this to variable as well. We'll do DT, and then we're going to do priority number. Okay, so we're going to feed that into our transfer to ACD step as kind of our skip ahead in the call flow type variable. All right, skill list. For right now, I'm just going to go ahead and set this as a string value. We're going to be dealing with this multiple times as we pull out this value. That's going to be that pipe delimited string value. For right now, I'm just going to assign it, and we'll take a look in our update statement what we're going to be doing to pull out our skill values. So let's do skill list. We'll just kind of keep it as that naming convention. So skill list. And then last but not least, language skill. We'll do DT, and then we'll just do lang skill. Cool. So now we've got our outputs from our data table ready to be used. Just because I want to be building out this flow in an easy kind of to zoom in type way. I would handle error handling a little bit differently, as I mentioned with the step before. But for right now, I'm just going to like disconnect these if we have issues. We're going to kind of assume happy paths all the way here, so that way I can just have calls that are valid so far, getting through these checks and moving along. So I'm just going to continue on after this data step is found, and we're going to go to the next logical decision. So next, let's do this update statement. So we're really going to get to some of the meat of what we're going to be creating for our transfer to ACD step at the very end. So first things first, let's go ahead and do that queue assignment. So we're going to be using a variable type here that is queue. So there is a type within Genesys Cloud of a variable that will be a queue. So we'll need to take this string value that we're pulling out of the data table and convert it basically into what is the object of the system. So let's go in here and we'll set so this is what was going to be the actual object we put in that field as the dynamic. So I like to a lot of times use a prefix here of final. Because really this is it. Like maybe I might do some manipulation of queue in another menu or something like that. But right now I think I'm just going to call it as is. So I'm going to say final queue name, or just final queue, because we've already got the name. So I'm going to say final queue. Do that. It's going to create it as a task item. We're not going to use kind of a drop down, hard-coded value. We're going to go into expression. And then there's going to be a function called find. So it is going to go and use a string value to go and basically search the system to see if it has a queue name like this. It is very sensitive to the naming they're going to have. So try your best to keep the naming as close as you can, especially because we're putting in values into a data table that we might change. These typically are not case sensitive. There are some functions that might be. This one is not, so it's okay if you maybe have a little bit of miscapitalization in there. I still just try your best to always use the same capitalization that you're going to have in your data table, and what is going to be the actual name of your queue in the system. So just a good practice to be in, but just as a little bit of a alleviation of worry there is not necessarily a huge capitalization precision that's needed on these. So let's go ahead and pass it in. So we've got that variable sitting right now as a string value in the queue name field. So find queue name, it's going to pass it, turn into a queue object, and that's really all we need to do for queue. So now we have a dynamic assignment through that data table of what we would need for that. And so those fields that I showed earlier in the data table are going to now be passed in dynamically to this object that we'll use in the transfer. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's do the language next. So we can do language skill. So that is a variable type as well. And we will do final lang skill. And we'll do expression, same kind of thing. And there is a find function for this as well. So find language skill. And let's go ahead and pass in the data table value. And there it is up there. Okay, so language skill assignments there, final queue. I really don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway just for the visibility of it. I'm going to go ahead and take the priority and make a final variable that we'll use in that transfer. I don't really need to do this because I'm not going to be converting it. I'm actually going to be taking an integer value and just placing it into another integer value. So I didn't necessarily need to do this conversion, but I'm going to do it anyway just so we can kind of see each of these kind of 4 outputs coming from the data table in one spot. So I'm going to say final priority. And then I'm just going to just assign it, and we don't need to do anything else. Priority number, yeah. So yeah, going from integer to an integer value. But hey, there it is, and we know we have a final property for that. So we got final queue. we got final language skill, and then final priority. So those are the three that are pretty straightforward, right? I mean, basics, we could go ahead and put in our transfer to ACD, just throw those values in there, and we'd be good to go. The trickiness is now we have to deal with that dynamic skill assignment. So what I'm going to do up front is we're going to kind of have two phases of how we're going to extract that string, parse out those different values, and then dynamically assign them and then put them in on that transfer to ACD. So this is going to take us a few more steps than what we just did with these values. I'm going to try it and do it in the most straightforward way just to kind of help you see how the system might be kind of thinking through some things. And later on, there are kind of even more advanced ways you can look at it to where you could do some of the logic I'm about to build out in a couple different steps, all within the transfer to ACD object itself. I'm not going to show those today. That's kind of, you can kind of follow along with my thinking, and I'll kind of reference that maybe towards the end. But for right now, I'm going to try and take it through a way that might be the best understanding for you following along with me. So let's go ahead and begin that. So what I'm going to do is there is the concept within Genesys Cloud of arrays. They just call them collections. It's really the idea. And even if you were to kind of make a collection, there's a function called make list. So there's kind of some confusing terminology there, but to keep it as straightforward as possible, we're going to be using a split function, which is going to take our string and turn it into a string collection. I'm not going to create a string collection as an object type. The split will kind of like take care of that for us. And then we'll be able to, kind of move on with it. Well, actually, you know what, just for the sake of it, I think I'll probably go ahead and create the string collection. Let's do it just so you can kind of see what it is that I'm working through. So let's do a string collection. String. Okay. So the way in which I'm going to do this is I'm going to go ahead and put the name of it. So we're just going to call it, we'll do, I'm going to use a very small variable name so we can kind of see this later. So I'm going to call it SSL. It's going to stand for skill string list, okay? So right now what it does, it populates for you already this, like I mentioned earlier, a function that's going to create a list, which is theoretically a collection, which in development terms is an array. So let's clear this out. And then I'm going to use what's called a split function, which is kind of our create array type function, if you will. So I'm going to pull in the string value that we have for skill list. And then I'm going to do a comma. And then we're going to kind of give it what the delimitation character is. In my instance, I like using pipes. Sometimes I even create some really complex ones where I kind of drill down then into a list within a list, and I might use like %sign or whatever. But I like to use the pipe delimitation up front. So we've got split. We're passing in a string value that's going to have those pipes within it. So now it knows to go through, take that string and put it in there. So in the example that we had where we had 3 values there, it's then going to create us a string collection of 3 values. So we'll hit close here, and now we have our list of variables that we wanted to get out of this update statement. So right now, though, we really just have a kind of array of strings of those names. We don't really have any skills yet. So we're going to now need to convert those. Let's go to the next step. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use a loop. Loops can be a little daunting up front. If you're familiar with kind of different programming concepts, sometimes there can be different ways of thinking about it, like a for each loop, or kind of what different languages have. This is kind of the way Genesys Cloud has its formatting for a loop. It's going to, again, more in this visual interface. So I'm going to walk us through a very simple way that we're going to use this loop. Up front, I'm going to go ahead and set an index variable for it. This I'm just going to name index, because you'll see why in a little bit. I'm going to be using a little bit of kind of complex expressions, and just to kind of keep a lot of these expression statements short. I'm going to be using some very small naming. So we can say how many times we want to go through this loop and a value. Like maybe I might say, hey, I want to go through this 5 times, so on and so forth. And so there's those applications that you might hard code that for good reason. I don't, because I want to use a dynamic count, because I don't always know how many skills are going to be in that list. I might have 2 skills, 1 skill, 3 skills, 4 skills. And in the instance of today, we'll allow up to 5 skills. So I'm not going to do a full 5 loop count. I can do is I can go through the loop just as many times as I need to. And the amount of times that I need to is the amount that we have in that string array right now that we created. So there is a count function. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in, and I'm going to put in that string array that we have. So, oops. Come on, reference it. There we go. Okay. So if we had the split function return us 3 skills, we'd now have a count of 3 string objects right now sitting in that particular string value. So that's what we have so far. And then what I'm going to do next is in this loop, I'm going to kind of create a new collection, and it's going to have the same amount of values. But this time I'm really going through this process to just show how we're taking strings that are going to be collections and then converting them into skill objects, which will be needed for our transfer to ACD. I kind of wish we could just take a skill collection and just pass that to the transfer ACD step, but that's just not the way that it's built. Maybe someday it will be built that way, maybe. But for right now, this is the way in which I can show it in the most straightforward way. So hopefully this isn't too confusing, but hey, I think this is maybe a good way of helping visualize how we were going to really do this. So let me go back in, and we're going to do another update statement. And this is going to be a little bit more dynamic of a collection assignment. So this time I'm going to come over here, and we're going to do a actual skill collection. And this time I'm going to name this one just SE, skill collection. So I'm going to hit enter on that. And then what we're going to do in this expression is a little bit of complexity. So we come in and we know what iteration we're in the loop based on the index value. And so now that's a variable. So we're going to use that to actually pull from the basically list collection that we have for the string value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an add, because we're going to be adding to this skill collection, which is basically at 0 right now. And I'm going to do add item, and so we need to pass it in. Okay, because we're creating the object and we're kind of looping through it, so there will be kind of this repetition that we go through. So when we're looking at an array, think about it as like, okay, add next item to this, and then reassign it to that SC label. So yeah, we are using the SC object within the expression itself, but that's okay, because what is the add item and its kind of complete function is what we now want the task.sc to become. So right now in this first iteration, it won't have anything in it. It'll just be blank. And so we'll be adding in our first item. And the way in which we're going to kind of do our conversion now is to use that find. We use the find queue, the find language skill. Now we're going to be doing a find skill. Okay. And we're going to do that based off of the current index of that string collection that we've passed in. So find skill means that we can't just say like 0 position or anything like that. We need to be referencing the index. And the way we can do that is with a get function, a get at function. And what this allows for is now us to pass in the collection. So now we get that as the SSL one. And then I need to give it the position. And we have that index as being the position that we're in for the current count of our string list. So I'm going to use that. So here's what we're doing here. We're saying add to our array, right now it could be 0. Find the skill at position within our string collection at position 0. And hopefully, that will be our first skill. It will then say, okay, add item, and then set that to task SC. The loop will then iterate because of the count. Then we would be basically finding our second skill, which would be the idea of taking the array that we have, which already had that one value in it, now finding a skill, and because that index is now going to be at position 1, that's kind of the second skill in that list. It's going to find that and then use that skill and then pass it into the variable. And the find skill, if it does fail, maybe we accidentally did the misspell things, it should be giving a not set value. So we should be okay there with not breaking anything. But again, like I mentioned, always make sure you can double check your naming conventions and all that as much as you can, just to kind of avoid the potential of us needing to have that happen anyway. But we should be relatively type safe with how we are doing that find skill with a string value that we're pulling from the indexed string list that we have. Okay, so now we have this loop creating now a skill collection. So our skills are there. The system has found them and put them into this collection. Again, as I mentioned, it'd be great then if we could just take this and pass it to the transfer to ACD step. Not quite how it works, and I'll show that now, but we are ready to go ahead and add in that step. Okay, so let's go down here and in our transfer to ACD, let's add in those objects. So this is where it might be, kind of trained to do it. Go to the drop down. We don't want to do that. We want to go to our expression, and then we can put in that final value, final Q. And there we go. The object type matches correctly, and we're ready to move on. I'm not going to change the NQ handling. We're good with just hold music for now. I just don't always like how it gives these silly warnings, so I'm going to do a to audio for the fact that I don't just really need a whole lot of audio prompts at these positions for the pre-transfer or anything like that. So I'm just going to put these as not set variables for right now. Boom. And now we're ready to move on to the next field, which is going to be priority. Like I mentioned, I could just really throw in the output of that data table, but just to kind of stick with the standard that I put up with, I'm going to go ahead and put in the final version, which is going to be that final priority. That's going to be that integer value, and we're set there. That's ready to go. We're not going to be using any of the other skilling, not skilling, but ways of routing that are available, preferred agent, direct agent. Those are kind of another video for another time. Language skill we will be changing though, so I'm going to go ahead and put in our value for that we found. So final language skill, and that is the proper type, so we're not getting any errors because it is expecting that language skill type specifically. So we got that right. Okay, so boom, we've got those 3 outputs ready to go. This is where trickery abounds, because now in this ACD skills section, we see there's really kind of nothing there right now. It's a little confusing because you kind of go there and you're like, wait, what's going on here? The way in which it works is you need to hit this plus button. Then what it does is it gives you 1 skill. And then you would hit this drop down and go through and find the skill you want, so on and so forth. And so if I had earlier gone through and just said like, hey, position 0 to skill, then yeah, I could put that in here and we're good to go. But like, what if we need, have 2 skills, and I don't have a value there and all that kind of stuff? It gets a little trickier. So what I like to do is, just so we have this all in a straightforward manner, is build out things in a bit more of a dynamic way here with a particular threshold, so that way if we do build out to where we might have a configuration of 5 layers of skills, we have these all set with a kind of conversion from that skill collection in the safest way possible we can, and being able to still provide a not set value. So if that skill value is not going to be there, it doesn't break anything, and we can still move on. We can kind of still see all this in a dynamic way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to an expression, AC skill 1, and I'm going to open this up. And again, within this, we're going to need to do some evaluation, because we may even have it in a data table entry where we don't have any skill assignments. And that can be a problem if we do anything with a collection and we do a get at and it doesn't exist. So for instance, if I did a get at and I passed in our skill collection, and then I said this at position 0, and we didn't have anything there, like there wasn't actually a value there, even though the collection exists and we just don't have a value, you might think like, oh, well, get at, if it doesn't have anything there, it will just do like maybe a null value, a not set or empty set, and it's like, okay, no skill to be there. That will not happen. It will actually cause the flow to break, because this get at a position of 0 when in a collection and nothing is actually there causes the flow to error out, and it will actually go to your error logic that you have built within a flow. So it would go over here to like event handling. Sorry, an error has occurred. Please try your call again, and just disconnect. Or if you want to build out something else there, you could, but that's what it will do. And that's not a great experience, because maybe, you know, with a failure, we want to go somewhere else, or this, that, and the other. And also it shows as a big whopping error within our logs as well. And that's just, I don't think, a very good design experience. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to have it to where we want to be doing a little bit more error validation for that. There also is another way is kind of performing a get at, and that is the task C, and then we could do brackets and 0. That would work as well. And the reason we didn't use this earlier in the loop was because we needed a variable as that field, and you can't put variables in here. So if I was to put that index variable in here, it wouldn't have worked. So when you do know the position you want, you can use the brackets, a little bit quicker way of getting to an index. But again, we're going to have that same problem. If we don't have a value here, it's going to error out, and I just don't think that is a good design. So we want to be able to allow for a actual not set property to be given to this value, so we don't hit a bit more of our error logic in that way. Okay, so let's go through and do that. So what we're going to do, like we did earlier when we went into the loop, and to know how many times we wanted to go through it, we did a count. And we're going to do that same thing here, and we're going to do it in all the other subsequent ACD skills that I add. And this is so that way we never perform that get at function, whether it be with the brackets or the actual get at function, where we don't even start to have the program think about it, so we can avoid that error. So I'm going to do a count, and actually, before we do that, I'm going to use an if statement, so that when this is how we get around not even kind of going through a actual execution of a get at. So if the first position is going to be our Boolean value, so let's do count. And I'm going to go and say that collection. So again, that skill collection that we've created, very similar to how we did the count of the string, really kind of same count function. But this time I want to make sure that there is more of a integer value of count that is greater than 0. So now we have done this assessment of we're good to go. We're good to complete what is going to be a get at function. So now if we know the count is that, what I can do is then say SC, and we are in the first position of ACD skill. So I do want to grab at that 0 position. I don't need to use the full get at. I can just do these brackets, so that way it's a little bit cleaner in my expression. And then if we don't have a value, so that's kind of the true position of the if statement. If I want it, or if it's going to be false, and we don't have any skills at all, then I want the not set property to be given for the ACD field here to be processed and executed. So again, this if count function is going to not even look at the task position 0 if that count is just not there. And that's good. That's what we want. So that way it just passes the not set and doesn't do that task, because if that task at position 0 kicked off and we didn't have any skill set on this call, it would not even allow us to go into the queue. It would just air out. We wouldn't be going and passing go to get into our queue. So definitely don't want that. Okay, so if count, blah, blah, blah. We got that. So what are we going to do for the next one? Well, it's really the same equation. We just kind of go, so I copied it. We're going to go ACD skill 2. Switch to expression. And so we're talking about the second skill here, but thinking in the terms of like arrays and all that, we kind of got to think a little bit more about the next indexed position. So if the count is going to be greater than 1, then we want to grab it at position 1, which is going to be our second skill. So if count is going to be higher than 1, so we're going to have 2 skills, then the task position that we're going to, the task variable position of that skill collection is going to be at that 1 position, again, skill number 2. All right, so we're good with that one. Let's move to the next one. And at this point, I'm just going to kind of move along and show you. All right, so we're technically at skill number 3. And then we're going to go to this position, and we are now at skill position 4. So we're putting 3s in there because of our index. And then the last one, yep, expression. And then we are going to have that be our position 4 for this being skill number 5. Cool. All right. And that is how we'll handle that dynamic skill assignment. So again, just as a review, we start at the top with evaluating the phone number that we're calling it on, basically our call address being our DNIS value, being proper, a telephone number. Then we did our data table lookup with just the last 10 digits of that number, so we can get these 4 outputs. Those outputs are going to be pretty straightforward for name, number, or the priority number and the skill language skill, but not for the skill list itself. We then went to the update statement to then take those string values and convert them when we needed to. We needed to do that for Q. And then the skill language and convert those into those objects. Priority came through as an integer from the data table, and we didn't need to convert it. I could have maybe made the data table value a string, and then that would have been a string conversion to integer, but I just went ahead and made the data table column value an integer. So that way we really didn't need to do that conversion. But hey, good to have that labeling of final priority. And then that's where we started getting a little bit of the complexity of this build, which is with then that skill list. We first then took the update statement, did a split function, which took the full string value out of the data table with those pipe delimitations in there, move those then into what is this kind of array of string collection. That object we then did a count on to say how many times we're going to go through this loop statement. That was our maximum count loop. And then we have our actual index that we then used within our actual update statement for when we did start to formulate our array of skill objects as an object in itself. So we did the add item, which took the the skill collection, and then we did the find skill. So we're doing that string to skill conversion right within this function, where we did the get at within that string list at being that index, assigned it, and then it would loop through as many times as we had skills within that pipe delimited list. And then that's when we were able to then move on to our transfer to ACD. And then we could go ahead and very quickly assign the queue priority and even language skill. And then we went ahead And with there being this kind of a little bit of clunkiness to the ACD skill adds area where you kind of have to individually add skills, I don't have just one field here to pass in that string collection. Not exactly sure why, but we're able to still get to what we want to by just going ahead and adding in a threshold of at least allowing for a layering of 5 skills. And then in each of these, I use the same expression, just iterating each time to say like, hey, do we have a count of skills above a certain number? And then going ahead and either giving it the not set value if it's not there, or assigning it at the position that's needed. And we did that count so that we were not trying to pull a value that doesn't exist, because there would be an error if we did a get at an array and there was actually no value there. So we should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this flow, and we'll test it out. And we'll see what it looks like in the views for our supervisor views for showing those values. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to need to do a call route change. So we've got our queue brought up here for sales. I'm going to go over here and go to my call route area and switch that up. And IT integrations. Nope, not that way. We're going to go into orchestration. Routing, call routing. And I'd already set up this one, dynamic skill assignment. So I'm going to change this to the one we just built. And then these are the numbers that I'm pulling in, 002, 003, so on and so forth. The one number I'm going to probably be calling in on is and testing out is this 006. So we've got that rolling. We're good there. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my analytics. And then that's going to bring up the sales group that I have pulled up for right now. All right, we're set to see this call come in. Over here on the data table, I showed this earlier as I already have 4 values in here. I'm going to be using that last one so that way we can see all 3 of those skills come in. And notice that we don't have a full 5. And then also that we should see a priority number of 10, where we'll see that skill list, and then also a language skill of Spanish. And then it should be going into the customer service queue. So actually, I think I do have that brought up. I mentioned sales, but I think I do have customer service brought up. So we'll go over here and make sure I do. Yep, customer service. So we're good there. Okay, customer service is the queue that we'll be calling in on. We've got this all set, so I'll keep this kind of up for right now, and then we'll move over into my analytics view to show our results. So let me go ahead and call in to my flow. It's dialing away. All right, my audio didn't come through on that one, so let me try again. Sometimes the RTP is a little tricky. All right, just not really want to play well with me today. There we go. All right. And again, I'm doing the 6, the one that ends in 6. And let's hop over and see what happens. So I'm in queue, so that's a good sign. We didn't air out, so let's see. All right, we're looking good. So over here, I've got a, let me put that on the handset so we don't have that whole music. Okay, so I've got 4 skills here, one of which is going to be that language skill. We know it is because if I click on it, it's going to show it as a filter over here for my agent list. And there is the language of Spanish, and I do have that on my agent over there. So I'll clear that. And then also we have a skilling of Southeast, Silver, and Warranty. So we kind of have like a region, maybe a kind of customer tier level, and then also maybe they were calling in about a warranty, so we have all that information. So do I have anybody with a skill warranty? Nope. So we do see in how the filter is going over that we did do the proper form of those skill assignments. We are in the customer service queue, so obviously that dynamic variable did work. And then also we see here there is a priority of 10. So with those 4 fields, those were all dynamically provided to the transfer to ACD object from our data table. So we had no kind of hard coding going on within that flow, and everything just kind of pushed along in a very fluid manner. So yeah. Okay, cool. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll hop over here to any chat. Sorry, I wasn't looking over here earlier. First on chat. Hello, are you doing good? Doing well? And then YouTube, how you doing? Okay, and hopefully the voice all's coming through okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for your compliment about my explanation of collection arrays. I know sometimes depending on what language you come from, that can be, kind of hit or miss as far as where that maybe kind of keys off in your brain about those. So I like to kind of spend a lot of time with that because it is interesting that Genesys Cloud went through kind of creating array objects that are specific to each of the object types that they might have, skills, languages, queues, all of that. So I'm not always sure what applications those always have. Like I said, the skill collection is not one that as an object that I can pass to the transfer, but there might be other objects that are just not coming to my head right now is where you could pass that object directly to an action within Architect. I just went ahead and went through that so that way I could show, a kind of process of how, that could be used in the future, but also how we've kind of already done that skill conversion. So when I did that transfer to ACD, we just went ahead and did that directly. So yeah, I think that will be what I have time for today. Thank you very much all for joining in. Appreciate you watching with me. If you have any other questions about this, please let me know. If you know of anything that is a bad way of what I've done here and how not good to pass in, not set, please let me know. I don't know the programming kind of behind the scenes of Genesys Cloud. Is kind of a closed system, so not open source for me to go through and see what exactly happens behind some of those value sets. But for me, like I mentioned, I haven't had an issue in going that route. It's usually worked pretty well for me to go through this configuration path. So, but yeah, and otherwise, if you liked it, it was helpful, at least helped you understand how loops work or even just variable types, please give a like. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing if you haven't already, would really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for being on call with me.